Let me talk about the North Carolina law. And on your screen, you should see, before I talk about this law and before I talk about how horrible the law is and how ridiculous um, the Republicans are who are pushing this, it would be wrong for me not to point out all of the Democrats who also support this. And 11 Democrats supported this HB2 out of North Carolina. The five that you see on your screen: Charles Graham, George Graham, Howard Hunter, William Richardson, Garland Pierce. The five of them are Hillary Clinton supporters. So we have five Hillary Clinton supporters, 11 Democrats who are supporting this North Carolina law that the Justice Department has now sent a letter to the state of North Carolina saying that it is clearly a discriminatory law. HB2 is a solution in search of a problem that simply doesn't exist, according to Mac McGeith. According to a letter sent to the state of North Carolina from Vanita Gupta, who is a top civil rights attorney lawyer for the Justice Department, HB2, they have concluded that it is in violation of of Title VII. The state is engaged in a pattern of practice of resistance to the full enjoyment of Title VII rights by employees and or public agencies. This is what the letter said. So essentially, because they are now in violation of Title VII, the state of North Carolina is slated to lose hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding because they feel the need to discriminate against transgendered Americans who want to use restrooms according to the identity for which they identify, the gender for which they identify. So because of this commitment to discrimination, they've passed HB2, and now the Justice Department, they have notified the state of North Carolina that they are in violation. And because of this violation, they could potentially lose hundreds of, never mind all of the contracts and all of the business that they're losing. Now they're going to lose federal funding and for any number of programs. This reminds me of conversation. There's a debate that I had with a constitutional, quote unquote, constitutional conservative. And we were debating for about half an hour. The video is on YouTube. And part of that conversation was helping him to understand why the federal government has the right to require that states and schools and people in the public square not be discriminatory. Part of that calculus is because these states want to receive federal funding. So they are in line when it comes time for the government to hand out money. And the stipulations and one of the requirements for them to receive this federal funding is that they not discriminate. And so now, everyone wants to talk about states' rights. Well, you know what? Maybe you can exercise your states' rights more freely if you just give up all the federal funding that you're in line for. But of course, they're not going to do that. Of course, they're going to, it's already lined up for people to challenge this law, not just because of the federal government threatening to pull federal funds, but also because of capitalism, right? Capitalism, they're telling all these corporations are telling them we're no longer going to do business in your state. So Governor Pat McCrory has started to make his move in opposition to this law. But before it's difficult for me to talk about this story and cast it in terms of Republicans doing something that's bigoted and discriminatory, because this legislation would not have passed if not for the Democrats who signed on to it. If not for the 11 Democrats who signed on for it, 5 of whom are Hillary Clinton supporters, not just supporters, but they have publicly endorsed Hillary Clinton. And so somebody earlier today, I read almost every tweet that gets sent to me. Most of the time I ignore all the trolls and I just laugh because it's funny. But one guy said something along the lines of, you need to grow up and unite blue. please tell me, should we unite blue with Democrats who are helping Republicans to pass discriminating legislation? Is that who we should unite blue with? Because if we are supposed to just fall in line with anyone who is a Democrat with a D by their name, then what good does it make us to have any type of political ideology, any type of political values that we identify with when the people who have D's by their name a lot of times do things that are just as detrimental to their constituencies as any Republican would ever do? Long story short, why the hell should we unite blue with Democrats who are going to codify discrimination just for the sake of uniting blue? I'm sorry, this entire excuse of everyone trying to make us afraid of Republicans, of, everyone's running around with their hair on fire, like the world is, the sky is falling and the world is coming to an end because we have, the Republicans have nominated a white nationalist, and everyone who wants us to be afraid. The problem is that Democrats are helping to pass some of the same legislation that you are complaining about. So if we actually united around values instead of around a color or around a party name, then we would be able to get rid of the people who are helping Republicans pass this repugnant and discriminatory legislation. So, yeah, let me put them back on the screen again. I want you to see these guys because they are the perfect example of why. This is the perfect example of why we should get away from this idea that everything is about uniting blue. Because here are 5 of 11 Democrats who have helped North Carolina to violate federal regulations and federal statutes, and now the state of North Carolina is in trouble not only with corporations around the country but also with the federal government, and they have discriminated against Americans. But hey, unite blue.